Hey there, it's Bronze and Modern Gods. I am John.
And I'm Richard.
And we are here all together. It's like I am the walrus. Coo-coo-coo-coo. I am John and I am Richard. Hey, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods. If you like our videos here on YouTube, and there's a lot of new people, thank you. Welcome. Hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't already. And, if you're really feeling generous, leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform if that's where you listen. Today, we are talking about the comic book market in 2022. Just like everyone else, I think, that's doing a comic book podcast. What's going on? Are we in a bull market, a bear market, boom or bust? Little from column A, little from column B. We're going to talk about it. We also have our underrated books of the week, the 25-year rule. But as always, we start with our hot book of the week. Richard, what is it?
Our hot book of the week can't be anything else other than Marvel Comics #1. A CGC 9.2 sold this week for $2.4 million on Comic Connect. That's just an amazing number for this book.
That's crazy. What's really interesting to me is it's a 9.2, but you guys may not realize this. There were 2 printings of Marvel Comics #1. The original printing has an October cover date, and it's said to be around 80,000 copies, and it sold out so fast that Martin Goodman, the publisher, was like, reprint this book. And so they reprinted it, and they did a little black plate over October. That's why there's a black blotch there on some copies, and a black November above that. That version, the second printing, has 800,000 copies that sold out. It was a runaway massive success. This is the infamous pay copy that sold of the second printing. It's called that because this is the exact copy that was found from the publisher that he kept, where he wrote little notes in the margin of this copy to reflect that things were paid. Bill Everett for Submariner was paid X amount of dollars on this date. Carl Burgos was paid for the Human Torch. So we know this is the pay copy. We know it's the second printing. Why is it a 9.2, Richard?
Oh boy, is this that curve grading that CGC seems to do for these high value books? I mean, I agree. I can't see how if this was a Ultimate Fallout 4, it would not get a 9.2.
I challenge any of you, if you have an extra copy of Marvel Comics #1, to write in the margins, send it in to be graded, and see how it comes back.
Yeah, I don't know how they justify it. I mean, I haven't seen the book in person, but just the fact that it's got this writing should invalidate it for being a 9.2, right?
It's historical. I mean, I'm being 50% facetious here because obviously it's a historical document. I mean, it's worth $2.4 million, and it's a 9.2 structurally. Should it be a qualified 9.2? I will let you decide. Obviously, the market has decided it doesn't matter, which is probably correct.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, these high dollar books, these over $1 million books, just hold their value, and I think are in a completely different category when it comes to grading. Me personally, I would hate to see one of these things come across my desk if I was a CGC grader, just because of the impact of your work.
Yeah. Well, let's look at it this way. How was this book graded? What tier?
It had to have been walkthrough. There's no other tier you could fit.
And walkthrough is a percentage of the perceived value, correct?
Right.
So you have every motivation to make sure this is a 9.0 or better, because you're getting a percentage of that potential sale if you're CGC, right?
Yeah, it's funny. You're absolutely right. They make money off of these books. This one single book will make more money than all the other books they may get graded that month. So yeah, it could definitely benefit them if they graded it as high as possible if it was on a fence.
Promise collection. Sorry, there's something in my throat.
Yeah, so if you take, if you go to CGC, a walkthrough is 3% of the perceived value of the book. or $150, which we can agree that this
I
is.
think it's going to be over 150.
I
Yes.
think so. So if you say, let's say 2 million is the valuation on this book, that means a $60,000 windfall to CGC,
For
uh,
one,
great
for one
investment for one book.
Yeah. Now take the Promise Collection. Sorry, I'll get off that. But yeah, it was in their best interest to look the other way at all the pencil writing or whatever in the interior and call it a 9.2, because then they can say this potentially could bring. Let's say they just estimated at $1 million. It's still a 30K payday for someone to manhandle that book and put finger bends all over it.
Oh man, you think, but you look at the other way. It's their benefit not to worry about or getting finger bends and butterfly and all those other wonderful new terms they've come up with.
Did the owner use CCS to press it? I'm suspecting no.
I would suspect no as well.
Yeah. Well, okay. We're getting off topic here. Historical book, first appearance of
Mhm.
Human Torch, first appearance of the Submariner, first appearance of Kazar.
Right.
Not forget that.
It's
The real reason
the
people
Marvel was the start of the Marvel dynasty. I mean, with
it was, yeah.
yeah.
And it's one of those books growing up that, wow, I wish I had a Marvel Comics #1. Life would be amazing. I could end it all tomorrow if I owned a Marvel Comics #1.
Think about it. If you had bought this book, if you had to, like, you're a trust fund baby and you had a spare $50,000, which is probably what it cost back in 1970, blah blah blah.
I think you're being generous. I think it was probably like a $10,000 book
Do you
back
think
then,
so?
if
You think
that.
so? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pre-grading, right? So
Yeah.
oh man, that would have been a great investment.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, Obviously, this book is impervious, our new favorite word for books like this, impervious to market fluctuations. But that does bring us to today's main topic, the comic book market here in 2022 so far. We're heading towards April. We've seen some changes from last year's admittedly huge booming market. I mean, there's no denying 2021 was a banner year for collectibles, not just comic books, but comic books in particular just
Mhm.
exploded. What's happened since? Let's open it up for discussion. Richard, you begin.
Yeah, you got to remember 2021 started off with a stimulus package that the government provided, giving all the American citizens basically, here's some money, go nuts. And it seemed to be it because of the pandemic, people had very few options for entertainment. It seemed that people spent money on comic books, and I think the peak of the market was around June of
Mhm.
last year. And from that point, we've seen things settle, and then we've seen a downturn for the past few months. Some of that I think is seasonal because of the Christmas holidays, the holiday seasons in general. People have other things to spend their money on,
Yeah.
so the numbers go down. But me personally, I think it's reached a point where we won't have any more significant drops for the bigger keys. I still think the smaller keys are going to be more susceptible to downward pressure, uh, mainly just because of availability and people focusing on having money to spend on other things. But those big keys I think they are. We talked about being impervious. I think they are excellent investment opportunities. I see things like ASM 1, X-Men #1, um, things like Fantastic Four, 48, 49. Those types of books, they are going to be immune to whatever downward pressure we'll see for the rest of the market, just because they are blue chip. Um, Outside of the recent market pressure. No, of course, the recent market pressure is the MCU. Marvel movies drive a lot of the value of the basement of comic book values. And as movies come in and out of the cycle, you'll see keys for those particular characters go up or down. Let's look at Eternals, for example. Uh,
Mm,
but some books are just immune to that. They will, the first appearance of Galactus is always going to be the first appearance of Galactus. The first
yeah.
Spider-Man book is always going to be the first Spider-Man book. And we've seen those titles. Amazing Fantasy 15 is a great example. just just ignore the market and just go in a direction of their very own.
Focus group of one being you and our friend. Well, let's make it two. Focus group of two. You and our friend DD Comics fan on Instagram, Forrest. You went to a show earlier today. So what did you see? What was the vibe?
Oh yeah, so Forrest and I went to a local comic book show. It's a show that happens every year, this time of year, and we've gotten to know the people at the show. I spent more time talking to people necessarily than actually shopping. Hi to everyone that I saw. I really appreciate the great comments people made about the show.
Did you wear your Bronze and Modern Gods
Yes, I
t-shirt?
did. I
Okay.
wore my Bronze and Modern Gods T-shirt. I had a number of people just recognize me for that, and I appreciate the kind words said. No tomatoes were thrown at me, so I appreciate that too.
Excellent.
But I haven't gone to this show over a number of years, so I think I have a good gauge at the previous crowds. Last year's crowd was a bit muted because everyone had a mask on, but even then, it was a busy show. There were lots of people in there. People were buying books. People weren't just browsing. Prices were high. We talked about wall books last year, about the numbers that dealers were putting in wall books. So you had to take that. You had to be a little bit of creative with finding something in your price range. I wouldn't recommend you spending more than the book is worth. But there was a lot of traffic in there last year. This year, no masks were necessary. Forrest and I got there right around the same time. The line in front of us was typically the year before we were like third or fourth in line. This year I was way at the back of I don't know, a 40, 50 person line.
Wow.
I showed up 10 minutes before. I normally show up earlier, but I had some things that slow me down today. And it was a vibrant, bustling crowd. People are there buying books. People were there shopping. It got to the point it was so crowded, the heat in the room from all the bodies got so bad. I had to take my coat off because I was sweating, and because of the temperature. It
How'd it smell?
it did not smell bad, I have
Okay.
to say.
All right.
Um, but it was. I saw a lot of movement on keys. I saw a lot of people focusing on keys. There are people. There's always going to be people there buying. They're trying to fill out their run, so that they need that ASM 237, or they need some book in the run that they got the little lists and they're looking at things. There's always those people, and God bless them, because I know how it is to finish a run. But there are people who are sitting there focusing on key Star Wars books. I had uh, someone that I've worked with for a while now come up to me and ask me my advice about some Fantastic Four keys, and it's people who are just focusing on those kinds of books. I saw a lot of those things move, and I think that's kind of the trend. People are consolidating towards those kinds of books more than like a year ago. Let's say Thor #6 came out, and there are 85 variant covers for Black Winter, and people were obsessed with buying all those covers, or Venom 25, or whatever the flavor variant of the day was. I think people are moving away from those.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. Just from my perspective, I'm seeing lots of non-key books that were prior to this year somewhat trending upwards, trending downwards
Mm.
on GPA. We'll see a couple of examples in the 25-year rule, for example. We'll have one, and my underrated book of the week. We'll have another example of this. It's not alarming, but it is trending down. I think it's a correction. I don't think it's a bust.
Mhm.
I think it's a market correction. And it's interesting because two things are coming up for me personally. La Mole in Mexico City next weekend. I'll be there. That'll be interesting because it's my first foreign comic book convention, and I'll have a report probably the week after. And then WonderCon is immediately after that, the next weekend in Anaheim, which I'm going to as well. So stick around, subscribe, make sure you're following us, because we're going to have a couple reports from those conventions. I think another thing is just we had a live sale this week.
Mhm.
Just from our personal experiences, if something is priced right, it'll fly. I
Mhm.
think that is where if we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit, we excel a little bit, is that we're not asking full price, full eBay prices or full whatnot prices or key collector prices for stuff. We kind of price it a little under and grade it appropriately. And people are like, okay, that's a fair grade. That's a fair price. I'll buy it. So that doesn't seem to stop people from just buying general filler issues. Like they want to complete their Claremont X-Men run.
Right.
Here's it. I blew out a whole bunch of those. But whatnot is interesting because we have some opinions on that.
You want me to start? Or you look at it start?
I can start. I'm not impressed. I want to be. I think it's really good conceptually. I like the interface. I like playing around with it. What I don't like is that I have to log in every time I open it up. Why do I have to keep logging in? Why every time? Why doesn't it not remember me when I'm signed in on my phone? Nobody's taking my phone and going onto my whatnot account. Stop making me log in every time. Besides that, I just see nothing but filler, like, low end stuff on whatnot. I don't see, and I can understand why. If you're going to put a Marvel Superheroes number 20 in an 8.0 on whatnot, and it's an auction and it's limited to the 25 people you have watching, it ain't going to end well, is it?
No, in a 2-minute auction or whatever.
Yeah, so you're selling your copy of Micronauts number 26 with a starting bid of $1. I mean, that's really all I ever see.
Yeah, I agree. I think Whatnot has a couple problems. One, there are significant number of sellers on there because it's the latest and the hottest. But I don't know if there's a number.
Is it though? Is it the latest and the hottest? I'm gonna question that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would too. But are there enough buyers to equal the number of sellers that are out there? And that goes to the auction format. If you only have 15 people who are interested in a book that you have for auction and only 2 of them bid, are you really going to get the best value for your book? Or are you going to get kind of what the 2 of those 2 decide is what the best value is? Small sample set is what I'm talking about. And
Yeah, that's my concern.
yeah, one of my biggest problems with it is it just seems to cheapen the whole experience. It feels like QVC for comics. I was talking to another podcaster today. I'm stealing his line. I won't even tell who it was, but it does. It really does. It's. I think I think it commoditizes comic books to be just like sneakers or baseball cards or just a variety of other things that are kind of sold in volume. Uh, these books, I think, have a higher potential for investment vehicles than your latest, general collectible. So
I do. I have to. I'm gonna go on a different path than you here. I don't mind that. I mean, it fine. That's how you collect. I'm not here to tell you how to collect. But I will say, if you're gonna live in that space, be prepared to make what you make in that space. You're not gonna sell big keys like that for any significant amount. And in full transparency, full total transparency to you guys, Whatnot has approached us to sell on the app, and we never replied because for the reasons we're telling you right now, it just didn't appeal to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. If that's the way you decide to sell, and it's a totally viable way of selling books, and for people who don't have a following, you could generate one on that site. It gives you a vehicle that handles all of the transactional things. It really simplifies the process of selling if you're looking for that type of thing. But I just don't. It just isn't for me. And I have to say, I have not sold anything on Whatnot. I have attended their training class, and I had my account enabled to sell on Whatnot, and I just never did it. So it got disabled. Maybe before I speak more about it, I need to do it myself and
Yeah.
see exactly what the experience is. I just going by the sales that I see. They lack something about the process of selling and the process of engagement that I just find is missing from what you get on Instagram or YouTube or even eBay, to be honest with
Yeah. What have you done for me lately? Whatnot. I think is what it comes down to.
you. Mhm.
Because I don't hate it. I think it's a cool concept, but like you said, it tain't for me right now. Maybe in the future, but right now, I'm not feeling it. But what do you guys think? What not, or who what, or no, or yes, or what do you think about the market? What are you guys seeing out there? We want to hear from you, so please let us know in the comments below. Because
Yeah.
we're
Are you guys going to shows? If you're going to shows, what are you seeing? I mean, what are you buying? Let us know.
And we are going to take a TARDIS right now back to 1997 for everyone's favorite segment. You ready? The 25-year rule. All right. Now, this next book for the 25-year rule, I imagine in my mind, if you were still buying comics in 1997, you were not on your sabbatical, you would have been buying this book.
Mhm.
If you weren't, I know Evan, our DC comics collecting expert, absolutely would be buying this
Yep.
book. And that is Transmetropolitan #1, created by Warren Ellis and artist Derek Robertson. This was originally part of DC's short-lived Helix line, but transferred over to good old Vertigo when Helix went bust. Do you even know what the difference between Helix and Vertigo was?
Not at all. No.
Neither did fans. Apparently, Helix was supposed to be more sci-fi oriented, and Vertigo was the fantasy horror part, mature part. Okay, let's slice and dice this. I won't even get into DC Focus, which came in the 2000s. That's even a whole nother slicing and dicing. Just call them Vertigo, guys. This was described as a cyberpunk transhumanist comic book series.
Wow.
There's a hook.
Yeah. Wow. That market segment is huge.
Let's sink our teeth into that. The main character, Spider Jerusalem, was loosely based on Gonzo journalist Hunter Thompson, Hunter S. Thompson, if you prefer. It ran for 5 years and 60 issues. It was very critically acclaimed. It had a following, along with 2 specials. It was optioned for a movie back in the day by none other than Patrick Stewart, of all people.
Wow.
He in the lead role of Spider Jerusalem, I would assume, because since they're both big old baldies like me. It never made it to the screen because it would be too expensive to film, apparently. I wonder if that's the case today with all of the quantum leaps in computer technology. A #1 in a CGC 9.8 was trending just over $300 over the last 12 months. But as we discussed in the earlier segment, it has dropped down to $229. So there is a book that it's dropped for sure. Transmetropolitan. What'd you guys think? Did you buy it? This one passed me by. I was not into it.
Never heard of it. Although I will say, books dropping in value. We didn't mention this earlier, but it's a great opportunity to buy.
Oh yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
if you think something is going to be hot in the future, if you know there's a Marvel movie coming out, Guardians of the Galaxy or Fantastic Four, whatever, now's the time to buy those keys because they are a depressed value.
Speaking of books that you can take advantage of in this bear market, here are 2 of them in our underrated books of the week. Richard, start us off.
My underrated book this week is Avengers #9, the first appearance of Wonder Man.
Wonder Man,
Eh,
Wonder Man.
was just devastated. I was just really surprised at the affordability of a single digit Avengers book, especially a first appearance. Now, of course, Wonder Man is, he's always been kind of a B-level hero. He was a founding member of West Coast Avengers. He was even I did not watch it, but he was in the recent Modoc
No one
TV
watched it.
show. Yeah, that was the problem
Don't
because
feel bad.
yeah, but it's a single digit Avengers, and it is still an affordable book. There's only one 9.8 on this census for this book, and it hasn't come up for sale on GPA. There's 1,300 books on the census total. The highest book is a 9.6 that sold in 2019 for $9,400. But a recent 8.0 sale was $1,400, which to me is just an amazing amount of it's a very affordable book, even at $1,400.
Find affordability. What
Well,
world
I'm
are
thinking of
you
others.
Pain?
Well, I'm thinking of other first appearances. If you look at single digit Spider-Man first appearances or single digit Fantastic Four first appearances, those books are just astronomical. Here you've got appearance of a character who's been on TV shows, comic books, cartoons. Wonder Man is one of those, I don't want to call him everyman kind of heroes, but he's kind of like the neutral hero that shows up to fill a cast of other heroes.
Always been a little schlubby. Like, I love Wanda, but the Vision used my brain patterns, and she's with him. I'm the real deal. Why isn't she with me? Me, 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 me.
But I saw an ungraded book. It's up on eBay right now for $200.
Okay.
It looked like a 4 or 5, but $200 to get a low number Avengers book as a first appearance. I don't know if he's ever going to be in anything, but I can guarantee he will be in other comic books in the future. Again, he's just one of those. He's one of those characters. I don't want to call him red shirts, but he's one of those characters that's always there to fill out a roster. And I think this is a good buy if you come across one for a reasonable amount of money.
He does have a really good history with the Avengers, particularly in the 70s and the 80s. When we came up, he was he was a core member of the Avengers. And I think, do you know the story behind this book after they published it? What happened?
No,
They killed him off in
right,
the same issue. They never brought him back because DC placed a phone call to Marvel immediately after this issue came out. They
really.
said, Wonder Man, huh? Let's stop it with infringing on Wonder Woman, please. And, Martin Goodman and Stan Lee acquiesced. And then in the 70s, when All Star Comics was revived with the Justice Society, DC introduced a character called a Power Girl. Marvel had Power Man. And so Marvel said, hey, you guys, you're going to have a Power Girl. We're going to bring back Wonder Man and the Avengers. So if you look at the timeline, the introduction of those two characters and the reintroduction of Wonder Man and the Avengers line up. It's really, I hate saying this in reference to Power Girl, a story about Power Girl. It's really tit for tat.
You waited to say that, didn't you?
Sometimes you back into a joke.
Oh, that was a great one. Yeah, no, yeah, there was a huge period of time between his death that happened in the same issue 9, and his reemergence. And I have to say, it's you're right. It was a staple of us, in the '80s of us growing up. I always saw him as a part of the Avengers. He had a long history with different Avengers teams, different incarnations of the Avengers. So you never know if there's a future Avengers show, movie, book, whatever. He may show up again.
The only time he was written to be likable and relatable was when he was best buddies with the Beast, Hank McCoy. It was always Wonder Man and the Beast, and that was fun. And I don't know why they went away from that with him. It really got into angst. But okay. All right. My pick for underrated book of the week is Mysterious Suspense #1. Richard, I think this is the first Charlton book we've featured on this show after 2 years plus.
Wow, you
Can
sure?
you believe that? I think it is. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, if you remember, but I don't remember featuring a Charlton book. This is the first solo title devoted entirely to The Question by sturdy Steve Ditko. Now, there's some speculation that the stories in this book were all intended for the Blue Beetle comic book that had been recently canceled because The Question was a backup in that book. But whether they were or not, this is a historic book. DC reprinted this as a Millennium Edition in 2000. It was the only solo Question book in existence until DC Comics acquired the property and relaunched him in the 1980s. A CGC 9.8 sold for, wait for it, $720 in November of last year.
Wow.
Is that a steal?
Yeah.
That's a steal. That's a bargain. I wish I had seen that. I'd be like you. I know you paint your rack behind you with beluga caviar. That's affordable to me.
Are you a big Question fan?
I am a big Question fan. I loved the Denny O'Neil, Dennis Cowan series from the 80s. I read it every issue. When they relaunched it as Question Quarterly, I hung on. But yeah, I've always liked the question. Less so the Ditko version. I like the art of the politics. Not so much.
Yeah.
We've seen the question on the Batman animated series and Brave and the Bold.
Mhm.
It would make a great HBO Max show, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I think he's a character that he's not your typical power superhero that solves problems with laser beams shooting from his eyes, for example.
No, it's down and dirty street crime.
Mhm.
That's what makes it great. The
Right.
best part of issue 1 of the relaunched series of the question, he gets shot in the head at the end of the first issue and dumped in the river, and you're like, "Oh, was this a one shot?" So he's not infallible, and that's what makes it relatable and a really good read. So
Yeah.
Mysterious Suspense number 1.
Yeah, I threw you a bone there. I was talking about shooting lasers from your eyes, and the question doesn't have any eyes.
No! Wow. Well, okay. I can't back into a two-face joke with a no face. I'm trying to
That's
figure
true.
it out on the fly, but I'm not having any success. That might be a good time to wrap things up for this episode. Just a heads up, we will probably not have a bonus episode this Friday because I'm going to be in Mexico City.
Yeah, yeah. Are you going to report from La Mole in Spanish?
I'm going to try. My Spanish is sub third year high school.
Wow.
I can get you to a bathroom. I can get you a police car. I can ask you where a hospital is. I can ask you how much that Tales of Suspense 87 is in pesos. But other than that, I might have trouble.
But it's going to be some exciting guests there, right?
Yeah, Bart Sears is going to be there. I'm not going to spoil it. I'll have a full report in 2 weeks when I get back. But until then, thanks everybody. Make sure you follow us at Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods. Like this video, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
So everybody stay safe.